There is a place at the bottom of South America where the continent loses its nerve. The land fractures. The roads run out. The wind arrives from the west with nothing behind it. No land mass, no city, no tree line, for thousands of miles. And the ice that covers the highest ground does not sit still. It moves, it cracks, it carves into lakes the color of something that has no name in the normal world. Patagonia is not a country. It is a region shared between Argentina and Chile, larger than France and Germany combined, yet home to fewer people than a mid-sized American suburb. In the north, volcanoes and lake districts, shaped by European settlers who came to disappear into a landscape large enough to absorb them. In the center, granite towers rising from ice fields so vast they generate their own weather. Glaciers that advance when the rest of the worlds are retreating. Canyons carved not by human hands, but by 10,000 years of water and cold. In the south, the continent disintegrates entirely into islands, channels, and a city that was built by prisoners because no one else would come. And at the very bottom, Cape Horn, where two oceans collide in water so violent that the sailors who charted these passages counted survival as success. Patagonia was never conquered by empire, by road, by weather forecast, or by comfort. It remains, at its core, a place the planet made for itself. To fully understand Patagonia, you first have to understand three things most people never realize about it. Fact 1. The ice that feeds a continent. The Southern Patagonian Ice Field is the largest temperate ice mass in the southern hemisphere outside Antarctica. It feeds rivers that supply fresh water to communities across southern Chile and Argentina. It regulates lake systems, coastal ecosystems, and weather patterns across a region the size of a small country. And it is shrinking. The glaciers here are retreating at rates measurable within a single human lifetime. Patagonia is not just a remote wilderness. It is one of Earth's most important climate systems, and one of the first places where the consequences of a warming planet became visible from the air. Fact 2. The land was never empty. When European explorers arrived in Patagonia and described it as wilderness, they were describing their own perception, not the reality. The Selknam, the Yagan, the Tehuelche, and the Mapuche had inhabited this landscape for over 11,000 years. They survived conditions that would defeat most modern expeditions. Not with technology, but with knowledge so precise and so specific to this place that it could not be transferred or replicated elsewhere. In the caves of the Rio Pinturas Canyon, their predecessors left messages, hands pressed against stone, still visible, still speaking, to no one in particular, to everyone who comes after. Fact 3. The route that shaped global trade. Before the Panama Canal opened in 1914, every ship moving between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans had one option. Come here, through the Strait of Magellan or around Cape Horn, through water that claimed more vessels than any other passage on Earth. Patagonia's geography did not simply define a region, it defined the routes of global commerce for 4 centuries. The ships that survived these waters connected continents. The ones that did not are still on the ocean floor. Where the continent falls apart. Follow South America far enough south, and the land stops behaving like land. It fragments. It loses definition. Islands appear where coastlines should be. Channels open between them that are not rivers and not ocean, but something in between. Cold, dark, and running in directions that change with the tide. This is Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire. Named by Magellan for the flames he saw burning along the shore in 1520, the fires of the Yagan people, who had lived in this brutal climate for thousands of years without the benefit of anything he would have recognized as shelter. The Beagle Channel runs between the main island of Tierra del Fuego and a chain of smaller islands to the south. It is named for the ship that carried Charles Darwin through these waters in the 1830s, a young naturalist on his first serious expedition, watching the landscape and the people with equal intensity. What Darwin saw here changed him. What he wrote when he returned changed us. The Strait of Magellan sits to the north. 50 miles of navigable water connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific, through terrain that looks, from above, like the Earth was pulled apart and the sea rushed in to fill the gap. Before modern routes, before engines powerful enough to ignore weather, this was the passage, the only passage. Ships lined up in Atlantic ports and made the calculation: risk the strait or risk the Horn. Many chose wrong. The wrecks are distributed accordingly. Standing at the southern tip of the American continent, looking south at the Drake Passage, where two oceans have been arguing for eternity, you understand something that maps cannot communicate. The world does not taper evenly. It ends badly. And in that ending, there is a specific kind of truth. The city built at the end of the world. Ushuaia did not begin as a destination. It began as a punishment. In the 1890s, the Argentine government established a penal colony here, at the furthest navigable point from Buenos Aires, on the logic that the landscape itself would serve as the prison. There was nowhere to run. The mountains, the cold, the channel, and the distance would hold prisoners more securely than any wall. They were right. The prisoners built the city anyway. They cut timber, laid roads, constructed buildings. They made something out of exile, because the alternative was to be consumed by it. Today, Ushuaia is the southernmost city in the world and the primary departure point for Antarctica. Several times each week, expedition ships leave this harbor and move south into the Drake Passage, one of the most volatile stretches of water on Earth, carrying scientists, researchers, and travelers willing to spend several days being reminded that the ocean does not care about their comfort. The city exists in a narrow band between the mountains and the channel. There is no direction to expand that doesn't immediately become either vertical or underwater. So it stays contained, dense, particular. In winter, the darkness arrives before afternoon. In summer, the light stays until midnight, and the city doesn't quite know how to process it. There are restaurants here, hotels, a ski area, a prison museum where the penal colony's history is displayed with the unflinching accuracy of a place that decided its past was worth keeping. The sign at the end of the main road says, "End of the world, beginning of everything." Which is either tourism or philosophy. In Patagonia, the line between those two things is thinner than most places allow. The Kingdom of Wind and Ice. Move north into Chilean Patagonia, into a national park that contains, within its borders, a complete argument for the existence of geological time. Torres del Paine. The towers themselves, 3 granite columns rising nearly 9,000 feet from a base of older, darker rock, were not built by volcanic activity or tectonic uplift alone. They were revealed. The granite was already there, underground, formed roughly 12 million years ago. The ice ages came. Glaciers carved away everything surrounding them. What remained was the hardest material, exposed, vertical, and indifferent to the weather that has been trying to smooth them ever since. The wind here is not weather, it is climate. Patagonian wind arrives from the west without interruption, crossing thousands of miles of open ocean before hitting the Andes, and when it meets the flat steppe east of the mountains, it does not slow, it accelerates. Gusts in Torres del Paine regularly exceed 100 miles per hour. Tents have been destroyed in minutes. Trails close when standing upright becomes structurally inadvisable. The park's famous circuit requires permits partly because of trail damage, and partly because the wind makes certain sections genuinely life-threatening on ordinary days. 60 miles away, across the border into Argentina, the Perito Moreno Glacier is doing something that most of the world's glaciers are not. It is advancing. While the ice fields above it are retreating, Perito Moreno continues its movement toward Lago Argentino, occasionally sealing off an arm of the lake entirely, building pressure against its own ice dam until the dam ruptures in a collapse of ice and water that draws scientists and visitors from every continent. The glacier is not stable. It is alive, in the specific way that something alive means, moving, changing, and completely beyond negotiation. In Patagonia, ice is not scenery. It is argument. The people who learned to stay. The emptiness of Patagonia is real, but it is not total. People live here. They have always lived here. And the ones who stay longest are the ones who stopped arguing with what the land requires. The estancias, large sheep and cattle ranches, spread across the Patagonian steppe in both Argentina and Chile, represent one of the great human negotiations with difficult geography. A single ranch may cover tens of thousands of acres. The nearest neighbor may be an hour's drive on unpaved road. The nearest city may be most of a day. The gauchos who work these ranches carry a tradition of horsemanship, self-reliance, and practical knowledge that has more in common with the land's demands than with any formal education system. They know weather by reading things that visitors cannot name. They know the difference between manageable cold and dangerous cold without consulting anything. They know which roads close first. This knowledge was not inherited from Europe. It was developed here, over generations, in response to a landscape that punishes guessing. In 1865, a group of roughly 150 Welsh immigrants crossed the Atlantic and landed on the Patagonian coast. They were not explorers. They were a culture protecting itself, fleeing the cultural pressure of English dominance in Wales, seeking a place remote enough that their language, their identity, and their traditions could survive. They chose one of the most isolated places in the Western Hemisphere. It worked. In the towns of Gaiman and Trelew in Argentina's Chubut province, Welsh tea houses still operate. Welsh is still spoken by a small but committed community. Welsh choral music, of all things, echoes in a landscape that Magellan thought was the edge of the earth. Identity, it turns out, is more durable than geography. The mountains that refuse. There are mountains that invite. Their slopes are gradual, their weather is seasonal. Their summits, while difficult, follow rules that experienced climbers have learned to work within. Mount Fitz Roy is not one of those mountains. Rising 11,171 feet above sea level on the Argentina-Chile border near the village of El Chaltén, Fitz Roy is not exceptional for its height. There are hundreds of higher peaks in South America. What makes Fitz Roy different, what has made it a singular obsession for the climbing community for over 70 years, is its weather. The mountain generates storms. Not metaphorically. The summit area creates its own atmospheric conditions so severe and so rapidly changing that summiting requires not just technical skill, but a particular alignment of the weather gods that arrives perhaps a handful of times per year. Cerro Torre, a thin, almost impossibly vertical spire 12 miles from Fitz Roy, is considered by many climbers to be one of the hardest mountains on Earth to summit. Not the highest, the hardest. Its peak is capped by a mushroom of rime ice built by the wind. Ice that cannot be climbed in the way ice is normally climbed, formed by conditions so extreme that the mountain essentially builds its own final defense. There have been controversies about claimed ascents. Arguments lasting decades about whether certain summits were actually reached, whether certain evidence was credible. The mountain has offered no comment. El Chaltén, the small village at the base of these peaks, exists primarily to serve the people who come here to try. Or to wait. Mostly to wait. In Patagonia, the mountains do not grant access. They grant audiences. On their schedule, not yours. The hands left behind. 9,000 years ago, before the Egyptian pyramids, before written language, before anything that most history books identify as civilization began, a human being stood in a canyon in what is now Argentine Patagonia and pressed their hand against a wall of stone, then blew pigment around it, lifted their hand away, left a negative impression, a silhouette of a living hand preserved in mineral color on rock that is still there today. The Cueva de las Manos, the Cave of Hands, contains hundreds of these impressions, accumulated across thousands of years of use. Left hands are far more common than right, suggesting the pigment was blown through a tube held in the right hand, meaning the artists were predominantly right-handed, working with a technique precise enough to survive 9 millennia. We do not know what the hands meant. We know they were intentional. The repetition, the technique, and the care required to produce them rules out accident. We know they accumulated across generations, which means the site was returned to, known, and valued over spans of time that make the concept of historical period feel inadequate. We know that people who had no metal, no wheel, and no written record stood in this specific canyon and made a decision. I was here. The canyon walls receive afternoon light in a way that makes the hands appear to breathe. UNESCO designated this site a World Heritage Property in 1999. The designation is appropriate and also slightly beside the point. These hands were significant long before anyone arrived to designate them. The water that glows blue. Not everything in Patagonia announces itself with violence. Some things wait to be found. Lake General Carrera sits on the Argentina-Chile border in northern Patagonia. A lake so large it generates its own wind patterns, and so deep that its color in certain light has no precedent in the vocabulary most people carry for describing water. It is turquoise, but that word is insufficient. It is the color of something lit from below. The marble caves, a series of caverns and tunnels carved into a marble peninsula extending into the lake, were shaped by water alone. 6,000 years of wave action against calcium carbonate. No dramatic event, no catastrophe, just patience, applied continuously, producing chambers whose walls shift color with the movement of the water outside. Blue, green, gray, white, as the light changes and the lake surface moves. The Baker River flows south from this lake, the largest river by volume in Chile, fed by glacial melt from the northern Patagonian ice field, carrying suspended glacial flour that gives it a milky turquoise color visible from altitude. It is a river that has never been dammed, one of the last significant undammed rivers in South America, a fact that required decades of political effort to preserve against significant commercial pressure. In Patagonia, the things worth keeping are not kept easily. The road through nowhere. The Carretera Austral, Chile's Route 7, runs roughly 770 miles through the Chilean Patagonian interior, from Puerto Montt in the north toward Villa O'Higgins in the south. It was not built along the path of least resistance. There was no path of least resistance. The road was hacked through rainforest, suspended across fjords on ferries that run on schedules the weather frequently overrides, and forced through mountain passes that are closed for weeks at a time by snow or landslide. Construction began in 1976 and took roughly 2 decades. Sections are still unpaved. Sections require ferry crossings that cannot be booked far in advance because the ferries do not always run. Cueva National Park sits along this road, a temperate rainforest of extraordinary density, where trees compete vertically for light they rarely fully receive, and where a glacier hangs from a cliff face above a valley, visibly suspended, in the process of becoming a waterfall in geological slow motion. The hanging glacier of Cueva drips constantly. Its edge is receding. What was rock and ice decades ago is now open cliff. What was open cliff decades before that was ice. The road bends around all of this. It does not alter it. The communities along the Carretera Austral exist in a specific relationship with time that differs from the urban world. Supply deliveries can be interrupted. Medical care requires flights or long drives on roads that weather closes. The choices about what to grow, store, and prepare for are made with a seriousness that flatland living rarely requires. In these villages, self-reliance is not a philosophy. It is the operational requirement for staying. The Ocean of Giants. Turn east, cross the Andes, descend onto the Argentine steppe. The landscape here is different, not dramatic in the vertical sense, but vast in the horizontal one. Flat, pale, wind-raked grassland running to a coastline that receives the full force of the South Atlantic. From above, Peninsula Valdés looks like the steppe reaching into the ocean and thinking better of it at the last moment. What happens along its shores is one of the most concentrated wildlife spectacles on Earth, when one of the least expected, given how empty the surrounding land appears. Southern right whales arrive in the sheltered bays of Peninsula Valdés each year to calve. The protected water, the distance from shipping lanes, and the relative isolation have made this one of the most reliable nursery grounds for the species in the Southern Hemisphere. The population nearly disappeared in the 20th century. It is recovering, slowly, measurably, because protection was applied before recovery became impossible. At Punta Norte, on the northern tip of the peninsula, a specific group of orcas has developed a hunting technique found nowhere else on Earth. They deliberately beach themselves on the shore to intercept sea lion pups learning to swim, then work their way back into deep water. The technique is taught, mother to calf, generation to generation. Culture, in the biological sense, passed down through a marine mammal community that has figured out, in this specific place, how to do something extraordinary. Patagonia does not only reveal what the landscape does to people, it reveals what isolation does to intelligence. The lost worlds inside Patagonia. Patagonia is not one world. It is several, layered on top of each other, sometimes overlapping, occasionally contradicting. Chiloé Island, off the Chilean coast where Patagonia begins in the north, is one of the places where those layers are most visible. The island was isolated enough from the Spanish colonial centers to the north that it developed its own architecture, its own mythology, and its own relationship with the ocean that the mainland never fully shared. The wooden churches built by Jesuit missionaries in the 17th and 18th centuries, constructed entirely from local timber by local craftsmen, without nails, using traditional carpentry joints, still stand. UNESCO lists 16 of them as World Heritage Sites. They were built without drawing plans. The builders knew how from watching the ones before them. Chiloé's folklore is not light. It includes sea monsters, shape-shifting shamans, ghost ships crewed by the dead, and a tradition of witchcraft specific to the island that was legally prosecuted into the 19th century. This is what happens when a culture is isolated enough, for long enough, to develop a complete interior world of its own. In Bariloche, 800 miles to the south and inland in the Argentine Lake District, a different story arrived. German and Swiss settlers brought an alpine aesthetic to a landscape that, in its lake and mountain geometry, genuinely warranted it. The chocolate shops, the architecture, the ski slopes, all register as visually incongruous until the surrounding geography makes clear that the settlers were not being eccentric. They were being practical. Patagonia absorbs cultures and does not return them unchanged. The last frontier. Return to altitude, to the place where Patagonia reveals its full scale, not as geography, but as condition. The Southern Patagonian Ice Field covers roughly 6,400 square miles. It feeds 48 glaciers. It sits between the Pacific and the Andes and generates weather systems that move east across the continent and west into the ocean, and do not ask permission from any political border they cross. It is one of the last great ice systems of the temperate world, and it is measurably smaller than it was 50 years ago, and smaller than that 20 years before. The hands in the Cueva de las Manos were pressed against stone 9,000 years ago by people whose entire civilization fit within a landscape that most modern humans could not survive a week in unaided. The Welsh settlers arrived in 1865 with a language to protect and a willingness to go further than anyone else to protect it. The sailors who threaded the Strait of Magellan and rounded the Horn did so because global commerce required someone to pay the cost of finding out whether it was possible. The gauchos on the steppe and the communities along the Carretera Austral stayed because leaving felt like losing something that could not be replaced. All of them made the same negotiation that Patagonia offers, and has always offered, to anyone who arrives here with the mistaken impression that they are in charge. The wind has been blowing from the west for as long as the Andes have stood in its way. It will be blowing long after every road built through this landscape has returned to gravel and then to grass. Patagonia does not end. It waits. Patagonia is not a place you visit and understand. It is a place you visit and begin, slowly, to feel the scale of your own smallness. A land where glaciers move without permission, oceans collide without ceasing, and ancient handprints on stone walls outlast every empire that rose and fell above them. The wind does not care that you came this far. The ice does not pause for the photograph. The wilderness does not offer comfort. It offers something rarer: perspective. Subscribe to Worldly and keep exploring the places that remind us what the world looks like when it belongs to itself.